Risa Schnebly is a PhD student and studies how wildlife conservationists experience ecological grief. She's also a science writer and communicator, and her work has appeared in Cascadia Daily News and ASU News.
I am pursuing a PhD at Arizona State University, and I am in my fifth year now. It'll probably take 6 years. And I research how wildlife conservationists experience ecological grief, which is a concept that's arisen over the last 10 years or so that basically describes the kind of grief that some people might go through after experiencing like the loss of another species or a place that's been important to them or, something within nature that's non-human. I started my undergraduate degree at UC Davis, but I dropped off out after a year when my mom developed stage 4 cancer. I dropped out and moved to Mexico with her to where she wanted to spend the rest of her life with her family and where she grew up. And then I took about a year or so just working like 2 or 3 jobs at a time after she died here in Arizona, waiting to get residency, living with a Thea of mine. And when I got in state residency, I started back up again at ASU. Had about a semester or 2 in person before COVID hit, and then graduated during COVID and just immediately started doing graduate school because I didn't really know what else to do with my life. I was given the opportunity to teach a science writing class, and it felt like, okay, I can do this for, 5 years or so, or I can go back to like waitressing or something. So the PhD something seemed like the better route, but I had really no idea what I was signing up for when I started. I didn't really fully understand what it meant to do research. And so that's been a huge process for me of like trying to understand, okay, this is what research means. This is what it means to be rigorous. But that's what led me to study ecological grief. Grief really dominated my life after losing my own mom. And still, it's been over 8 years now since I lost her, and it's still very much a part of my everyday. And I had originally wanted to go into wildlife conservation myself, and then I've always just had an interest in nature and started like writing about de-extinction, the people trying to bring back woolly mammoths and stuff like that. And through thinking about that, kind of came to thinking about extinction more as through this philosophical lens of like, this is a form of loss, like, and what does this mean to us? And it's a form of loss that has like in itself been so central to the conservation movement, right? But what is people's relationship to it? Like, are people grieving in the wake of an extinction or the loss of some creature? And I kinda started out with, like, the actual research path with talking to just undergrads at Arizona State to see kind of what their relationship to nature was or whether they really had any emotions about extinction in the first place, and most of them didn't. Like, most of them were like, "Oh, I didn't even realize that there was, like, a biodiversity crisis." Like, this was a novel concept to 18-year-old business students. And that was, maybe not the most surprising in hindsight, but pretty disheartening. And from there, I was like, well, okay, I want to talk to people who do feel something in the wake of this loss or are more likely to feel something. And so that's led me to start talking to, yeah, wildlife conservationists who work with endangered species and some of whom work with pretty critically endangered species like the vaquita porpoise and the Gulf of California. Yeah, I interview them and just listen to their stories about, like, what that experience has been like and what kinds of loss have actually elicited an emotional experience or not. And I analyze those interviews according to, like, the literature of grief and bereavement that comes from humans grieving other humans, which has allowed me to learn a whole new language about grief and which has helped me personally in a lot of ways, as well as hopefully will allow me to, like, help start these conversations within scientific institutions that are so resistant to letting people be emotional. That's a big goal, and a through line to what I do is trying to bring humanity into science or to humanize scientists, which also is a big reason why I got into doing a lot of science communication and science writing work. I'm planning to write my dissertation largely in a narrative nonfiction style, weaving in bits of my own life and perspective into, the stories that I've gotten from the people that I've talked to through my research. And yeah, I was a AAAS mass media fellow last summer and got to work as a science journalist in a hyper local newsroom in Washington State, which was really awesome, writing environmental stories that were extremely place based. And yeah, I'm still trying to do some freelance writing, and I write for my university department, and I'm always juggling a bunch of I put together storytelling events. I am putting together one right now for another department at Arizona State about people's like Phoenix community members' relationships with water, which is exciting. So, yeah, I'm always telling stories or getting other people to tell stories or yeah, talking about emotions.
Risa's passion for science communication grew out of her love of writing. While taking writing courses at Arizona State University, she was introduced to the field of science communication and science journalism, where she began developing and refining her skills and gaining experience in communicating scientific ideas to broader audiences.
I always loved writing and just, was one of those kids that was like, you can't be an English major because you won't make any money. But through being at ASU, yeah, specifically my mentor, Jane Mindshine, has been so pivotal in everything that my life has been since I came back to school. Through her, she runs a class at Arizona State called the Embryo Project. She started this open access encyclopedia forever ago that like talks about the history and breaks down the science around all things like embryology, reproduction, and development, like developmental biology. And it's an amazing resource. It's totally not in my field of research or study, but that's how I started writing about de-extinction, was through writing about genetic engineering and cloning and that kind of technology for the Embryo Project. And it really, really taught me. It's this amazing, really unique class where, you know, students get to get really intense hands-on feedback from their professor. And Jane Mindshine is this like incredible, badass professor who was like an amazing writer and an amazing communicator. And for her to be giving such hands-on feedback to students is like super rare and unique. And for all of us to be commenting on each other's articles and like really learning how to write concisely and clearly and accessibly for other people and give each other feedback. So that experience was like for sure one of like I don't think I would have realized or been on this career trajectory without Jane Mindshine or without the Embryo Project. Um, and from there, I kind of realized, like, and through meeting people within that kind of community, I started to hear about, like, oh, there are ways that you can get paid to write about science. I heard about like medical writing or maybe doing freelance editing, and I had learned like fact checking skills and all of that. And so I started kind of looking into that on the side a little bit more. And eventually I got again really lucky that a recently retired New York Times reporter from the science desk there decided to co-teach a class here at Arizona State. His name is Jim Gorman with a psychologist here named Clive Wynn. And they taught a class about like writing about animals. And that introduced me to the like world of like more traditional science journalism and put the Mass Media Fellowship on my radar and put organizations like ComSciCon, which is this great org where grad students put on and organize free workshops for other grad students to learn communication skills. Um, and then, yeah, like taking that class in itself taught me about the structure of writing a news story and, what is a lead and how to interview well or pull out good quotes. And then like a big synchronous coincidence was just that my department had put up a job posting for someone to write like a communications position, writing stories for my university's news that semester. And I got the job and through that have gotten more practice just writing, not journalism, but feature stories about scientists and covering, breaking down papers and learning to write about them. And yeah, I applied for the AAAS fellowship finally yeah, whatever winter that was, 2024, kind of on a whim, being like, oh, people apply for this so many times. Like, I'm not going to get it my first chance, but we got it. And that was, yeah, really special. I felt like, yeah, that felt really validating, especially like I know so many people who get that fellowship are coming from really prestigious universities and have a ton of freelance journalism experience. I've only freelanced in a journalism kind of way once or twice, and I'm still working on learning that skill. But yeah, that was a really great experience. And, we got to do an orientation and a wrap up in Washington, D.C. at the AAAS office, which felt so like prestigious and fancy. And yeah, and then I got to write for as a journalist in the Pacific Northwest, which I lived there during high school in Oregon, and I spent the summer in Washington. But yeah, it was such an interesting experience to like get to know a place through trying to cover environmental stories there. Um, yeah, and it was definitely difficult in some ways. Like I was sleeping on an air mattress the whole summer. Yeah, it was really fulfilling and really informative. And yeah, I don't think has convinced me to like go full speed ahead on the journalist direction yet, but yeah, I really want to keep practicing journalism skills and have that as, one writing style in my arsenal.
One skill Risa has taken away from her work experience is learning to write directly and clearly.
Every kind of science writing is going to take different skills and you have to switch it up depending on who your audience is and where you're writing for. But yeah, I think with like writing this kind of encyclopedia style thing, it taught me to like you don't have to wait to reveal the main point until the end of the story. Like just say what's happening, why it matters. State the problem, state the solution, just be clear. Like and then yeah, writing without jargon, writing without passive voice, all that, classic talking like a normal person when you're writing on paper kind of skills is definitely important and feels like one of the like main things you have to learn right away before you start, delving into like developing your personal style. Yeah, and then also while I was taking the embryo project, I was taking a lot of nonfiction, like creative nonfiction writing courses, which is great. I got a certificate, like a grad certificate in that. And that was wonderful. I'm not sure how common that is for people interested in sci-com or science journalism. But yeah, I like really learned I still do a lot of memoir style writing and it taught me to write like really beautifully. I think or like really pay attention to words and language and structure and, kind of mess up the rules of the formulaic journalism or encyclopedia writing. Um, which, now that I'm like a little bit more focusing on trying to write journalistically again, I'm like, okay, I have to remember the rules, like say why it's important right away. Like you don't need a whole lead in to like you don't need to tell some beautiful fairy tale before. You just need to say what matters and what's the news, right? Um, so yeah, I think, but I mean, my heart really is with the like loving language and paying attention to individual words. So I feel like that training, yeah, was really informative as I was just starting to get more into writing.
Mental health has been an ongoing challenge alongside her work, particularly because her research focuses on grief and deeply personal experiences. Speaking openly about these challenges has helped her process them and continue engaging with her work in a meaningful way.
I think just one of I mean, the biggest challenges of life in general is just my mental health has been such a struggle throughout my life. I got a PTSD diagnosis last year, which yeah, and my fellowship experience was wonderful, but like also I was going through like having this kind of experience in the stage of PTSD that I'd never really experienced before. It made it really intense and really lonely. And I think, I make my work is about grief and it's really intensely personal and it's like very not objective, you know? And I think I started off with a lot of fear and a lot of imposter syndrome about like bringing so much of myself into my work and the space. But, I've like really become, I wouldn't say comfortable, but like more willing to share things like that about like, I'm not doing okay half the time. I'm like, and I don't think most people are, and I think like so much of the ethos behind what I want my work to be is about like just being like open and human and not pretending everything is okay in a world that's falling apart. And like when so many of us have our own histories of, you know, trauma and hardship and loss that we are not sharing with each other and it feels so isolating, right? And so I think as I've like, taken steps to be more open and vocal about like I'm not doing okay, like that has so continually been met with, like, understanding and compassion from other people, and so often, like, invited other people to share the same things with me. And, yeah, I feel like that's just continued reinforcing, like, I'm not sure what my career path will be, but, like, I am doing what I do because I want people to just feel okay being open with each other. I wanna be open with people. I wanna stop pretending that we can just work all the time and, like, it's like that everyone's fine, you know? And yeah, I mean, I'm working through these challenges of mental health by going to therapy and taking time off and having community and like leaning on my friends, right? But I think also just like speaking them out loud to people and like holding space for other people to do the same, like has been huge and like has allowed me to continue being here rather than, dropping out and saying, I don't need this, you know?
Risa recommends staying open to different possibilities and staying ready to go different directions.
I am not like a 5-year plan type of person. I do things I like. I really try to work hard and, commit, like hold true to my commitments, like not say I'm going to do something and not do it, right? But I'm like very motivated by just what I want or what I think is fun or meaningful. Um and I'm like really just staying open to different possibilities and trying to like best prepare myself to go multiple different directions, right? Like, I think for some people it works to have like a really specific plan and like know exactly what steps they're gonna get to be there. But I think for me, like, it really just works to try to learn as much as I can, like, keep my eyes open to opportunities and like be adaptable, I think. And yeah, I think also just asking for help. Like so many people, I still have no idea what's going on. I'm asking people to chat with me all the time. And yeah, I think a lot of people feel like shy or like an inconvenience, but like the worst case scenario is that someone just doesn't answer your email, you know? So it's always worth shooting your shot. And sometimes that can really get you somewhere much more helpful.